county judges known throughout the state for that.
Didn't know that. It should be right by your foot.
So I have to crawl down there? So y'all pass.
Me too. It's not important.
No, I'll take care of it either way.
Okay.
It just, I got enough. I got enough paper. I'm good. I'm not worried about me. Don't ever. But thank you for the thoughts.
Julie and Judge.
Not yet. Are you ready?
Yes, Judge.
I thought you were still waiting on him.
Oh, I got it. I got it.
We're
Thank
good.
you.
Let's bring in the jury.
All right. Let's all rise for the jury, please. You know which way you want to do it. Please watch your step. Please watch your step. Please be seated.
You can resume.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Stoddard, we had talked yesterday about the iPhone 5 and whether you were able to look at the call log and verify the phone calls as well from the defendant's own phone regarding records from AT&T and from Home Depot.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's already been shown to the defense as State's Exhibit 647. Do you recognize State 647?
Yes.
And is that a printout of the call log from the report on the defendant's iPhone 5?
It does appear so.
Your Honor, I would tender State's Exhibit 647.
No objection to that.
Admitted.
Detective, in the course of your investigation, when you were examining the iPhone, did you examine certain parts of the phone that had notes and things of that nature?
I did.
Did you come across something called, from an app called Evernote?
I did.
And what is Evernote as far as you could tell from researching it?
Evernote is just a way you can share notes or share files online.
Okay. Now, in the course of your investigation, did you also come across a sermon that had been done at the defendant's church on June the 15th?
I did.
Okay. And what was the nature of that sermon?
It kind of goes through and it talks about sin and desire and to death.
Okay. And was it like I guess a lengthy sermon that day?
It was.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 648 and 649. First showing, well, based upon what you found, did you subpoena records from Evernote?
I did.
Okay. And did you get those records back?
We did.
Okay. First, Judge, I would tender State's Exhibit 648. There's a business record certification for this, as the other exhibits, to permit the authentication of these records.
I don't object to that.
Admitted.
And showing you State's Exhibit 649, do you recognize this?
I do.
And how do you recognize that?
It's an actual printout from the Evernote.
And is that a fair and accurate photograph of the file from Evernote depicting what the defendant had typed into his phone on Evernote on June the 15th, 2014?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I tender that exhibit as well.
Don't object to that.
Admitted.
Now, with this, out of all of the sermons and things of that nature, this date, 6/15/2014, did the defendant enter anything into his phone or take any particular notes?
He did.
Okay, and on that, what was the title of his note?
Anatomy of Temptation.
And what did the note say under Anatomy of Temptation?
Underneath Anatomy of Temptation, it says desire is greater than sin, and it doesn't say it's greater than, it's like a greater than sign. So desire is greater than sin is greater than death.
Let's publish this to the jury. that Sunday as well, both, during the day, was the defendant engaged in the same type of, behavior, contacting other women and things of that nature?
Yes, he was.
We talked a lot about, yesterday, these whispers and things of that nature, okay? I've got a few other ones, to go over with you, okay? I'm gonna start with State's Exhibit 636, defense has already seen this. There was one, whisper, do you remember a whisper where it did not have the photograph on it, on the back? And it was, his conversation with the 17-year-old girl talking about a double life?
Correct.
Okay. State's Exhibit 636, is that actually the whisper that goes with that?
Yes.
And it says, "I would have sex for money."
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I would tender State's Exhibit 636 at this time.
Same objections that we've made previously to all of these, information that was downloaded electronically, Judge. All the same objections.
Admitted over all those objections.
Now I'm going to show you what's been marked, shown to defense counsel previously, State's Exhibit 631. Watch out for the microphone. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 631?
I do.
And how do you recognize that?
I'll just look another whisper.
Okay. Now, is this a whisper between an unknown participant on June 18th, 2014, starting at 2:46 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay. And is that conversation, does that report a fair and accurate representation of the conversation that was pulled from the defendant's phone?
Okay, sir.
Okay, Your Honor, I would tender that exhibit as well.
So 631?
I believe that's what it was. 631, Detective?
631.
Yes.
Let me see that again.
At 10:46? I think it both begins at 10:46.
Yeah, sorry, I said 1046.
Ah, I thought, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
What is the time?
It's 1046, Judge.
That's what I thought. Same objection.
Same ruling.
So at 1046, tell the jury first of all, what is the actual post that the defendant was responding to?
Having an extremely boring and slow day. Can anyone help the time go by faster? Question mark, 20F.
And how did the defendant respond to that?
My J just started to.
And what time did he respond?
10:46 a.m.
What did the other person respond back with?
Just started and I feel like I've been awake for forever. Haha.
Okay. How did the defendant respond to that?
Defendant, I woke up at 5:30, killed me.
And what time was that response?
That was at 10:48 a.m.
Okay. How did the person respond to him?
Haha, geez, that sounds horrible.
And then at 10:50 a.m. on June 18, 2014, how did the defendant respond?
Defendant states, well, I have a son. That Joker decided that, hey, I'm going to get up early.
Okay. So 10:50 a.m. If it were asserted that, or somebody said that this message was before the defendant dropped Cooper off, would that be correct or incorrect?
Incorrect.
So it was actually after.
Correct.
After he talked about having a son and that Joker decided to get him up early, how did the person respond?
Haha, oh, gotta love kids.
Then how did the defendant respond?
LOL, yeah.
Did the person ask the defendant a question then at 11:14 a.m.?
The person states, how old is he? Question mark, question mark.
And then how did the defendant respond?
2.
What did the other person respond back to him?
Oh, what a great age.
And then how did he respond at 11:17 a.m.?
He's awesome.
So 11:17 a.m. Do you remember about what time the defendant left to go to lunch?
Not too long after.
Okay. And did that other person respond back at 11:17 on the last
They
page of that?
said, I bet. Smiley face.
Okay, I'm going to show now what's been previously shown to defense counsel as State's Exhibit 630. Ask you to take a look at State's Exhibit 630. Again, you recognize that as a report from a conversation between the defendant and a participant via whisper known or screen name Housewife 0127.
Yes.
Okay, and is this on January 24th, 2014?
Yes,
Okay. And is this a fair and accurate report of the conversation you had with that person?
it appears so.
Your Honor, I tender State's Exhibit 630.
Same objections.
Same ruling, admitted over objection.
Now, this post says, I'm seriously thinking about leaving my husband right now. We're separated and I don't see him making an effort to fix things. I love him, but damn, I deserve better than having to deal with his BS. How did the defendant respond to that at 12:33 p.m. on that day?
That sucks.
And how did the other person respond to him?
Yeah, I'm just tired of being stressed out and pissed off all the time.
How did the defendant respond to that with the next two messages?
Get a divorce? I might.
And did the person ask him a question?
Housewife, why are you thinking about it?
How did he respond?
I'm a cheater.
And what does that other person say?
Oh,
How does he respond?
yeah.
Then what does she respond?
Housewife 0127, I think I'd kill my husband if he cheated on me.
How does the defendant respond?
I'm addicted to sex.
How does she respond, and what does she ask him?
Like, seriously addicted? Or you just like it so much you say that?
And what did he say?
No addicted?
And he used some profanity on the next page.
I'd fuck you if you wanted. I love it.
Mhm.
See, I'm terrible.
And what does she say in response?
Well, I love sex and want it all the time, but I've never cheated. Do you need to go to a group to get help with your addiction, with your addiction? Or are you just not happy because you're not getting enough?
Did the defendant respond after that at all?
You did not.
I'm going to turn your attention now to State's Exhibit 632, which has already been shown to the jury. I think we get about 4 more of these. Looking at State 632, this is a message between the defendant and a whisper user by the name of, I'm going to spell it Sunniche.
Yes,
Okay, and was this from March the 6th, 2014?
it was.
Okay, and this is a fair and accurate report of what was the chat message between the defendant and this user.
Yes.
Your Honor, I tender State's Exhibit 632 at this time, subject to all the defendant's other objections previously.
Objection.
Admitted over objection.
Now, Detective, this whisper says, I fuck my problems away. Well, not away, just sex keeps me from grieving. How did the defendant respond to that whisper?
Sex makes me feel better.
How did the user respond?
Me too.
And then how did the defendant respond at 10:19 a.m.?
I'm cheating when I do it, but fucking seems to solve most, if my anxiety.
Okay. How did the other persons respond to that?
See, I stay out of relationships for that reason, but yeah, any more added stress and I'll fucking pop.
Okay, then what does the defendant say after that about his lives?
Oh, I keep my 2 lives separate.
And what does she ask this other user?
It must be a long-term relationship.
How does the defendant respond?
It is, but I'm addicted to using sex with strangers to make me sane.
And how does the user respond in the next 2 messages?
He doesn't fill that void for you. You might want to try role play at IDK. It just sounds like some insanity waiting to happen.
And how does he respond?
She doesn't.
How does the user then respond?
Well, I understand. I did that once just to keep myself sane as well. And it was some major BS when it came out.
And the next message, what does he say?
Yeah, I keep the BS far, far away.
Okay, and we don't have to read the last couple of statements he makes, but there's something about the sexual connotations.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked and shown to defense counsel at State's Exhibit 634. Sorry. Looking at 634, is that a message, conversation between the defendant from his phone and a user participant by the name of KIKA?
Yes.
Okay, and is that a fair and accurate printout of the conversation with that user?
It appears so.
All right, I tender State's Exhibit 634.
Same objections.
Admitted over objection.
Now, this whisper that he responded to states, need a new guy, bud, to talk to, 21F Marietta. How does the defendant respond to that?
Hi, Kika. K-I-K-A, Kika.
And how does he respond?
Hey, hey.
How does he respond?
What's up, madam?
Going on down to about, look at 9:01:52, just to kind of speed up this process. What does he say to her in the midst of their conversation?
LOL, tell my woman that, haha.
How does she respond?
You have a girl?
And what does he say?
I do. Is that okay?
And how does she respond in the next two messages?
Yep. Better for me, exclamation point.
Okay, and this is on March 30th, 2014, correct?
Correct.
Now at 9:31 p.m., how does he respond?
LOL, why better for you? Question mark.
And then on the next page, does he make another statement? At the top at 10:11 p.m.
I'm kind of jealous.
Okay. I'm sorry, I think I
You
skipped a page. I sure did. Okay, let's go back to page 2. Sorry about that. Looking at 10:03 p.m., about 2/3 of the way down, the KIKA person asked him a question.
How long have you been with your girl?
And how does he respond?
7 years.
Then does he ask her a question?
You're single? Question mark.
How does she respond?
Whoa, 7, question mark, exclamation point, awesome. Yes, I am.
And then how does he respond on the top of the next page at 10:11 p.m.?
I'm kind of jealous.
Does she ask a question?
Why?
And what does he say about that?
My bad side wants to be single sometimes,
Next statement he makes.
but it is what it is.
How does she respond?
Yeah, I just got out of a 5-year relationship. It was hard, but for the best.
And how does he respond?
I see.
Now, does she respond then again at 10:19 p.m.?
So I have no choice but to be single, LOL.
And what does he say?
I understand.
Does she then ask him another question about his living situation?
Yep. So y'all live together, question mark?
How does he respond to that?
Although I'm not a sex-crazed maniac, I do have my moments, but I kind of lead a double life.
And then does he make another statement?
We do.
Does she ask him another question?
A double life, question mark?
And what does the defendant say at that
She
point?
doesn't know I whisper.
And does the KIKA person then respond with 2 more statements?
Yes. LOL, that sounds silly. And what do you do in whisper, question mark?
And for the rest of this conversation, they go on having conversations about random things and things of that nature,
Mhm.
sexual
Yes.
conversation toward the end.
Yes.
Finally, I'm going to turn your attention to State's Exhibit 633. Looking at State's Exhibit 633, is that a conversation between the defendant and participant Blonde Bombshell on the 7th of March 2014?
It is.
Okay. And is this a fair and accurate printout of the conversation between that participant and the defendant?
It is.
Your Honor, I would tender State's Exhibit 633 at this time.
Same objections, including relevance and everything that we argued before.
All right. Noted, submitted our objection.
The post, this whisper post says, "I'm sure your God is very proud of you for giving up Starbucks for a month." How does the defendant respond to that at 2:44 p.m. on the 7th of March?
Awesome.
How does that user respond?
Haha, I know, right? I hate that whisper. It's the only place I can post that because all the religious people will freak out when I'm on Facebook, Instagram.
And how does the defendant respond?
I'm religious, but fuck giving up something for Lent.
How does she respond?
Right. I feel like people have completely diluted the concept of it. I'm not religious, but I was raised Southern Baptist.
How does he respond to that?
I'm the lead guitar player at church. I'm not giving up shit.
And then does she respond in the next 2 statements?
Around here, are you even near me? Haha. My brother is a worship leader.
And how does the defendant respond to that?
I'm in Marietta.
What does she say?
Oh, dynamite.
And then how does he respond?
You?
And how does she respond?
I'm in Snellville.
Starting the next page, what is the defendant's next 2 statements he makes to her?
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm a church guitar player, but I can lead somewhat of a double life.
And does she ask him a question?
How so?
What does he say?
I'm too naughty for my own good.
And then does he give some kind of emoji?
Some kind of emoji.
Is that a colon and a backslash?
It looks like forward slash.
Forward slash, okay. And then does he then ask a question at 2:54 p.m.?
Yes. Yeah, I scared you away, frowny face.
Does she actually respond about 5 minutes later?
No, I was just getting ready for work, sorry.
Does she then actually make another statement or ask him a couple of other questions?
And so what are you afraid of? The church judging you or God?
What does he say?
Neither. I just know I lead quite a double life.
And does she ask him or say anything else to him?
Oh, you posted it as if you found it problematic.
How does he respond?
Oh, it is, but I love it.
And what does she say after that? Does she ask him a question?
Yes. So why do you believe it's a problem?
And how does he respond?
Well, I'm not very single.
Does she ask him a question?
And question mark.
And what does he say?
You don't see an issue, question mark, smiley face emoji.
And then what does he say after that? Or she say, sorry.
She says you can be in a relationship and still be able to do your job properly, so no.
And how does he respond at 3:08 p.m.?
I do everything perfect, but my secret life is very secret.
How does she respond?
Still doesn't sound like much of a problem to me.
Okay. Does he then ask her a question?
Do you lead the same life?
And how does she respond?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same with everyone. I withhold certain things from certain people, but that's for their own good, and I really have no problem with it.
Okay. And then does he, excuse me, does he make a statement to her?
He does.
Okay. And what does he say?
So tell me a secret.
And does she then say something to him?
Yes. Well, like my parents don't know who I slept with, but it's my sex life. I don't need to know. Nor do they need to know how many drugs I've done in the past or that I've been arrested.
Let me make sure I got this right. How does he respond to that at 3:16 p.m.?
None of my other life know about my sex life.
And does she respond to that?
See, and it's not really their business unless they ask. It's compartmentalizing your life. I'm sorry, and it's not a bad thing.
Okay. And how did he respond to that?
Like I drove an hour the other night. A friend blew me. I drove home. Nobody knows.
And then does she respond?
Exactly. They don't need to.
Does he respond?
I still can't believe she did that.
Now at 3:24 p.m., what statement does the user Blonde Bombshell, make to him?
Well, that's great. I really don't care. I just wanted to discuss moral ambiguity, but I think you just want to talk about sex.
Okay, and what are the last three statements that he makes?
I don't actually. It's my caveat, though. But I like the idea that someone else is accepting my moral ambiguity.
Does he say my or how?
But I like the idea someone else is accepting of moral ambiguity.
Now, when you got the iPhone, the defendant's iPhone as well, you did this extraction, things of that nature. Did you also go back physically onto the phone to take photographs of what, regardless of what they could pull off from inside the phone, what actually was on the face of it or what you could see on the phone? Okay.
I did.
Okay, and did you actually photograph what you did as far as looking at the phone to see what you could see on the face of it?
I did.
Okay. And Your Honor, the jury, don't worry, I'm not going to go through all these with them, but for the record, I'm going to show the defendant what's been marked as State's Exhibits 440 up until 522. Then we skip 3 numbers, and then from 526 to 600. Detective, have you already looked at all these?
Yes.
Okay, and having reviewed them, are those fair and accurate photographs of the defendant's phone that you took physically when you looked at it and examined it?
Yes.
Okay, and around when was it that you actually took those photographs and examined his physical phone?
It was after the PC hearing. I don't have the exact date written down. I'm sorry.
So it was much longer after the actual extraction and all the scientific stuff?
Yeah, it was towards the end of July and early August.
Okay, and when you did that, did you have it on airplane mode to
Yes.
ensure nothing was, it didn't get internet service and things like that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, Your Honor, I would tender these exhibits at this time.
Just the objections regarding
make it easier for the jury, I'm just gonna use this little Elmo thing over here to put the photographs up. And while we're getting it set up, I'll go ahead and start pulling some of these photographs. Okay, Detective, well, we're working on that. I'm going to show you 447, 448, 449, and 450. Are these photographs, could you tell the jury what's depicted in those photographs as far as phone calls and numbers called and dates and times and things of that nature?
First one, it's under recess, Deanna Harris, wife. It shows a missed phone call, June 18, 2014, 3:49 p.m., missed. It shows the number. And it's got some other personal information at the bottom.
Okay, so that would be on the defendant's phone, so he had a missed call from Leanna Harris at that time?
Yes.
Okay. The next photo?
And then on the next photo, it's Leanna Harris. It says wife again, June 18, 2014, 4:24 p.m., canceled. 4:04 p.m., outgoing call, 1 minute. 3:54 p.m., outgoing call, 4 seconds.
So basically on that, it shows like the defendant's phone records at 3:54, he tried to place a call after 4 seconds, hung up, and then at 4:04, there was an outgoing call that lasted a minute.
Objection, leading.
Listen,
What does it reflect regarding 4:04?
At 4:04?
Incoming or outgoing call from the defendant's phone?
It's an outgoing call, 1 minute.
Okay, and then finally, at 4:24, what does that show depicting any phone calls to Leanna Harris?
It shows canceled.
All right. Now, looking at the next exhibit,
It shows June 18, 2014, once again, it's Leanna Harris, wife, June 18, 2014, 4:25 p.m., missed.
so a call missed to this phone, defendant's phone from Leanna Harris at 4:25.
Correct.
Okay, and finally 4:50.
At 4:50, it shows the Home Depot, June 18, 2014, 4:25 p.m. outgoing call, 5 minutes. 4:25 p.m. outgoing call, 26 seconds.
And is that the same, is that reflected as well in the records that we've already seen?
It is.
We'll publish 447. I think I can do this upside down. Zoom on the front. So basically, do we see it right here? Can the jury, can y'all see that? See this photograph? Okay, good. I don't have that back with them. It's got a little glare on it, but showing, I'm just publishing State's Exhibit 447, the phone call at 3:49 that was missed. Publishing 448. Showing the phone calls at 3:54, 4:04, and a canceled phone call at 4:24. State's Exhibit 449, publishing, which is again reflecting the 425 missed call from Leanna Harris to the defendant's phone. And finally, 450,
Judge, I'm going to object. This board is just testifying. There's no questions here.
just identifying the photograph I'm showing to the jurors. And State's Exhibit 450, showing the Home Depot phone calls. Okay, Detective, when you were going through the phone, go to states 587. Did you actually take a picture of, actually I've got that listed wrong. Not 587. Okay. Did you, looking at States Exhibit 583, did you take a photograph of how the phone looked regarding messages with Leanna leading right up until the last text message he got from her that day?
Yes,
Okay. And is that reflected in States Exhibit 583?
it does appear so.
Okay. I'll publish this to the jury. And when he received this text at 10:49 a.m. on Wednesday, June 18th, it says "Get to work." What is the message right above it? Whose
Can I
name is
step in?
mentioned?
Can I step down?
Yes, if the judge is okay with it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Right above where there's a text message, "Get to work okay" from Leanna to the defendant at 10:49 a.m. Whose name is right there above it from a previous message?
Cooper?
Okay, you can have your seat again. Okay, we talked about the Evernote record. Did you also find it physically on the phone, that note that he had written in his phone?
I did.
Show you the marked and admitted as State's Exhibits 528, 529, 530, and 531. Excuse me, I'm sorry. 529, 530, and 531. Showing you those are all photographs regarding the note made on June 15th, 2014.
Yes.
Publish that briefly to the jury. That's States 529. States 530. And States 531. Detective, also, when you look through the phone, did you also try to photograph the presence or absence of any types of applications or things like that that may have been used, including Kick and Whisper and things of that nature?
I did.
To show you States Exhibits 465 to 467. States Exhibit 510. And States Exhibits 593 through 599. Okay, showing you all of these exhibits. Will you look through them briefly and just tell me if those are all photographs that you took of the phone that depicted how the applications appeared on the face of the phone and when you went into certain folders and things of that nature?
It does.
Okay. Not sure if I could get you, detective, sorry, get you to step down to discuss this with the jury. Now, detective, publishing 593, is this a general overview of the applications and things like that things that you can utilize on the cell phone as you saw them back when you took pictures in 2014?
It is.
Okay. Is it stuff like weather, messages, just general things on this page?
Correct.
Publishing States Exhibit 594. Is that just another photograph you took of the same screen?
Correct.
Okay. Publishing 595. What is located in that?
Contacts, calculator, maps, Apple Store, extras.
Okay. Is that like another folder that you go into and you see these other apps?
Correct.
Publishing 596. And what is that? Is that another folder with a title?
Finance,
And under finance, what type of apps do you see?
Nationwide, Fine Branch, Co-op.
597 is this further financing. Are those all financially related type applications?
There.
Now 598, is this a shot of if you scroll right, the different, is it swipe?
If you swipe, you go to the second screen.
Okay. And then is that now you see folders with different types of topics and folders, other applications within them?
Correct.
Okay. 599, is that another photograph, basically, just a little bit different angle of the same screen?
It appears.
510, what does that appear to be?
Ninth hour.
Okay. And what was within ninth hour?
Oh, Basecamp Hangouts, FreshBooks, Ninth Hour, Dev Hello Sign, SBB, just different QuickBooks.
And the Hangouts out there, is that something, a tool that he used to communicate, we've already heard about, with people that were involved in ninth hour development with him?
Yes.
And ninth hour, does this appear to be related to his, I guess, business on the side they were trying to start?
Correct.
Okay, now showing you 465 within folder media. We see different things like Netflix, music, and things of that nature, and Bible, guitar chords. 466, also in media.
iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, 4-track, Pandora, Nook, Chromecast, Drive.
And then finally, in states 467, is that just another group of things found in media?
Correct.
Okay. Detective, you can have your seat. Now, with any of these, were you able to locate the application for an app for Kick or Whisper or anything like that?
Not at the time.
Okay.
The photos were taken.
Detective, since that time, have you reviewed that phone physically?
I have.
Did you actually locate those applications?
Yes.
Where were they and why did you not see them the first time?
They're under a separate screen. They're under a separate file that says weather. So there's actually 2 weather apps. It's under the second one. It doesn't have a little mark saying it's multiple folders. If you open it and then swipe left, it opens a whole nother folder which has the Kick and it's got the Kick, the Whisper, possibly Scout. I don't remember Scout's in there, but Kick and Whisper in it.
So he had these apps hidden in his phone under a different heading as weather.
System.
Where were these things? Obvious to plain sight or hidden?
They're hidden.
Reading,
That is not leading, Judge.
You can ask.
You can answer.
Hidden.
Okay. Detective, I'm going to show you what's been marked, or actually admitted, as States Exhibit 226. First of all, looking at States Exhibit 226, is this the phone we've been talking about, the iPhone?
Yes.
That was turned over to your custody by Sergeant Thorpe, I believe it was, after it had been taken from Piper.
Yes.
Okay, and is that, in that bag, did you also, in addition to the phone in this case, add anything else that you collected from the defendant during your interview?
The phone cord.
Okay, and is it, all both of those things, are they all in the same or similar conditions the last time you seen them?
There.
Okay. Now, detective, I'm gonna ask you to take out the phone, if you can power it up. And as it's powering up, does the defendant have a passcode? And did he give you a passcode to get in that allowed you to physically go in and view the phone?
He did.
Okay. And what was that passcode?
052706.
And was that, did he give you that at the first of the interview, or did he say anything different when you interviewed him initially?
Later on in the interview.
All right. Now, is it powered on?
It is powered on.
Okay. If you can open it up. All right. I'm going to ask you to step down and show the jury on the Elmo. Could you go ahead and type in his passcode? Okay. I can show the jury as it appears. Let's see if we can focus that. I'll zoom it in a little bit. Go back. Go back. Okay. All right, look at these applications. Is this the first screen of the cell phone?
It is.
Okay. Could you go ahead and swipe one way? Okay, and what do we see here? Is there anything regarding the weather stuff on this page?
Yeah, and there's a second weather app up here.
Okay. Looking at that weather folder, is that where you found the hidden apps?
Yes.
Okay, could you go into that folder? It's photography.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or photography again.
All right, weather.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so a second page in weather, and what do we see here? What are these different
Kick,
apps?
Whisper, Gmail, Scout, Google Voice, and Snapchat.
Okay. Kick, did it require a passcode or could you get into it?
I believe Kick was open and Whisper was password protected. I haven't been into this in a while.
Okay. Were you able to even get into the Whisper physically with a passcode, or were you not?
No.
Okay. But you had the records from actually pulling this file?
Yeah, we actually had the Whisper records and everything from looking at earlier.
Okay. Thank you. You can have your seat. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll probably use it, but, Carlos, can you help me move it back a little bit? We'll just move it back a little bit so we can make sure it's nice. still have the phone taken?
I do.
Let's see that, please.
Yes, sir.
You were the initial lead detective on this case as early as June the 18th, 2014.
That's correct.
So it's been 28 months. Does that sound about right?
That's all right.
Okay. In that 28 months, have you located any witness to whom Ross expressed malice or hatred toward his son Cooper?
No, sir.
You have found lots of evidence that he was unfaithful.
That's correct.
And that evidence came from not only things that you recovered from his phone, but witnesses you spoke to as well.
That's correct.
I want to talk to you a little bit, first of all, about the nature of the relationship between Ross and Cooper. You would agree that that is a primary area of investigation in any murder case. You want to find out about the relationship between the deceased and the charged, right?
That's true.
Okay. So in this case, you looked into defects.
We did.
Okay. In fact, you actually had a defects agent on the scene.
We did.
What was her name?
Devin Jones.
Okay. Had you worked with her before?
I had.
And she was called to the scene just because it was a child death, right?
That is correct.
And she looked, and you followed up and determined that there had been no prior defects cases, right?
Yes, sir.
So, in trying to determine the relationship of the parties here, we know that Cooper would have spent a lot of his time at Little Aprons
Correct.
because he was there during the week, during the day while his parents worked.
Correct.
So, you interviewed the daycare workers at Little Aprons.
I did.
And there were quite a few of them. Karima Fletcher, Azure Hawkins, Melanie Gibson, Kenyatta Patrick, Michelle Gray. Can you think of any others?
Terrell Dudley.
We'll get back to him. And what you learned in speaking with them was that Ross was a very caring and loving father.
That was the general opinion, yes.
They expressed to you that Ross would most often be the one to drop off in the morning.
Yes, they did.
And you learned that he wasn't a drop-and-go parent. He actually came into the room often and sat down on the floor and got Cooper together and spent a few minutes with him.
I don't recall that exact phrase, but yes.
You certainly didn't learn from any of the daycare workers at Little Aprons that there had been any suspicion of abuse or neglect of Cooper.
No, none of the Little Apron workers said anything about abuse or neglect.
Okay. And you would have specifically asked them about that?
Yes.
What about the neighbor, Joey Nesbitt? Did you speak to her, or did one of your detectives speak to her?
I believe one of my detectives spoke with her.
And she was often in the home and often babysat Cooper.
Correct.
And what you learned from her was...
Objection, hearsay.
Who interviewed her?
I'd have to review my report.
Okay. Was it you?
No.
It was not you.
Joey Nesbitt, no.
And Judge, I'm not objecting, no matter who interviewed her, it's still hearsay.
Was it Detective Murphy?
We can ask them.
Once again, I'd have to review
investigator?
I am.
You told us the other day, kind of like the ringmaster of the circus.
Very true.
And that's not just at the scene, that's over the entirety of the case.
True.
Okay. You're kind of responsible for knowing what everybody's doing in the case, right?
That's true.
And that would include the detectives that are working with and for you as they're going out interviewing witnesses as well.
And that's correct. That's why the detectives, we do reports. Reports all go in one central report. Of course, they do supplements. They do supplements to the main report, and then just kind of the report grows from there.
Are you aware that the neighbor Joey Nesbitt was interviewed?
It sounds familiar, but once again, I'd have to review my notes.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's just kind of cut to it here. You've got a big binder, and that I'm assuming contains all of the reports that you
All
received.
supplements, yes, sir.
Yeah. If there was anything that had been, any of the detectives had determined from their investigation, that there was any suspicion, any history of abuse or neglect, that would be reflected in your file and you would know about that.
We would hope so.
You didn't find anything like that in your investigation in this case.
Besides the actual death?
You know what I'm asking about.
No, I don't. Can you please be clear on your question?
Okay. You didn't find any history of abuse or neglect by Ross, did you?
By history, no one reported to me any history of abuse or neglect.
And you didn't find any?
Once again, I think no one, I'm going to keep it at, no one reported to me any abuse or neglect.
Okay. You're not testifying to us about any? You don't have anything to share with us?
Except the whispers and the chats and the stuff that we went through already.
All right. So your testimony is that whisper and chats, things he was typing on his phone, constitute abuse or neglect?
It led up to the death of Cooper.
All right, let's talk about objective evidence regarding the nature of the relationship between Ross and Cooper.
Okay.
In interviewing a number of people, again, we've got the folks at the daycare in particular. And of course, most of them have testified. You also spoke to, or one of the detectives would have spoken with coworkers.
Correct.
Okay. Is there anybody else that you can think of that y'all interviewed in your investigation of the nature of the relationship between Ross and Cooper?
No.
Okay. And is it fair to say that what you learned through interviewing these people was generally that Ross loved Cooper? He bragged on him and he spent time with him?
That was their general opinion, yes.
Okay. And you learned that Ross would even participate in events at the Little Aprons, such as dressing up as the Tool, going over there to spend time with Cooper in that regard, being involved in the special events such as the Halloween carnivals, things like that.
That's correct.
You're aware that we've had some pictures that show Ross bringing his dad over to kind of show Cooper off at the Little Aprons.
I believe so.
You learned that it wasn't uncommon. Sometimes Ross would actually just drop by Little Aprons during the day, just to visit with Cooper, see how he was, or have lunch with him.
That is correct.
Okay. I want to show you, right, 19, this is offense 19. You've seen this. you agree that that's Ross and Cooper together?
I do.
Okay. And here, this is, states 21, this is from the, what in the world happened today. Have you seen this before?
I have.
Okay, and you agree that, that dressed up as the tool there is also Ross?
I believe so.
Okay. And Defense 70, you've seen this before?
I have.
Okay. And you would agree that from the extraction report, you know that this is a photograph that Ross took of Cooper on June 11, 2018?
I do.
And you know that this was taken at Little Evans here in the day?
I believe so. I'm not sure where it was taken, but it was on his phone.
Ross texted this to his wife on June 11.
He did. But more importantly, with this photograph, if you look at the gallery where that photograph comes from, there is a picture of his exposed erect penis also on the same screen as the picture of his son sleeping.
I know that you're interested in talking about Ross's sexual endeavors, but what I'm asking you about right now is the nature of the relationship between Ross and Cooper.
I
Okay?
think that shows it, because if your son's picture is on the gallery, so on the phone, on the gallery, is a picture of his sleeping son. It's a beautiful picture. But on that same gallery, there's a picture of his exposed, erect penis in a turgid state. On the same gallery, the same page, when you go through his phone, it says double life.
You done?
I'm sorry, is that a question?
You finished with your
I am done, sir.
Speech.
Thank you.
Okay. You know that Ross took her to Chick-fil-A on occasion, right?
I do.
And would you agree that taking your son to breakfast, spending time with him, would demonstrate the nature of the relationship between the two of them?
Yes, sir, I would.
It demonstrates perhaps a parent who wants to spend a little time with his son when he can.
Yes, sir, it does.
And you're aware that on the 18th, the manager, Chris Redmond, had seen them together in the Chick-fil-A that morning.
That's correct.
Did you interview Chris Redmond?
I did interview Chris Redmond.
Okay. And he expressed to you what he observed as well.
That's correct.
And we know from his testimony and from when you interviewed him, what he explained was that he observed father and son appeared to enjoy spending time together.
I think that's fair.
And when we're talking about the nature of the relationship between Ross and Cooper, you also made inquiry, not just you, but the other detectives who were assisting you, Detective Gracie and Murphy and Stockinger, whomever. They also asked of some of the other women that Ross had been in communication with. They asked very specifically questions about the nature of the relationship between Ross and Cooper. Isn't that true?
That is very true.
Certainly, we've heard from Chelsea Doster, and she gave us herself what it was that that Ross expressed to her, and you don't disagree that as far as the nature of the relationship between Ross and Cooper, what Chelsea Doster expressed was that Ross loved his son.
Yes.
Okay. And it's fair to say, however long their online relationship was, Ross had never said a cruel or unkind thing about Cooper. And you don't recall anything like that, do you?
I do not recall.
And of course, we heard from Jane Meadows, who Ross had been speaking with for even longer, over a year. And Detective Murphy interviewed her, right?
I believe so.
Did you ever interview her?
No.
Okay. And of course, she's testified, and we heard what she had to say as well. And as far as the nature of the relationship between Ross and Cooper, you agree that what she observed was consistent?
Object, Judge, at this point, if he's going to keep going into statements of people that have already testified, I believe that's hearsay at this point. You can ask about information he's found, things like that, because going into what people have already said, that's hearsay.
I'm just talking about his investigation. If all of these, if all of the information he gathered during his investigation regarding the nature of the relationship was consistent from witness to witness.
Thank you.
And you would agree with that, what you learned during your investigation in interviewing Jane Meadows on a couple occasions, Detective Murphy or whoever interviewed her, was consistent with what you'd heard from everybody else. He loved that baby more than anything. Wouldn't do anything to hurt Cooper. Was his pride and joy. Couldn't imagine a life without Cooper. That was the information you received, wasn't it?
Yes.
And the information in investigating the nature of the relationship between Ross and Cooper, is it fair to say that his co-workers expressed similar type sentiments? Ross would brag. He would brag about Cooper. He would show photographs, things of that nature.
Yeah, Ross would talk about, or the defendant would talk about Cooper.
I want to go into a couple things real quick that we talked about this morning while it's still fresh on our mind. Now, you identified where these applications were on Ross's phone.
Yes, sir.
Kick and Whisper.
That's correct.
And they were under a what appeared to be a weather app.
That's correct.
Okay. And so you would agree, and there's no doubt Ross was running around on his wife, right?
Correct, sir.
There's no question about that.
No.
Okay. And you would agree there's no question that Ross didn't want his wife to know about that. Is
True.
that true?
Very true.
Okay. And so what we saw on his phone would you agree would be a way that Ross might could prevent her from seeing these things?
Yes.
But he didn't delete those apps on the 18th, did he?
He did not.
That Kick app was still on his phone.
Correct.
The Whisper app was still on his phone. He did not delete them, did he?
No.
He had a gallery of images in the thousands that included lots of very graphic, filthy sexual images. Isn't that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And he didn't delete those on the 18th either, did he?
No.
They were all there.
I won't say they were all there, but there was
Thousands.
thousands. We're still there.
And as a matter of fact, on the 18th, through these applications, in particular what we've been talking about the past 2 days, Whisper and Kick, he added to the filth on the 18th, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
Okay. On the 18th, on that Kick app, which he did not delete from his phone, he had all kind of communications with other women that morning and throughout the day, including the exchange of sexual images.
Yes, sir.
And graphic sexual language.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you agree that, in fact, one of those communications on the morning of the 18th with a woman by the name of Elizabeth Smith, that morning, he actually asked her to hook up that very day.
I believe it was Elizabeth Smith. I'd have to review, but yes.
Okay. But you would agree that, and just to make clear, Elizabeth Smith was the one who Ross had previously hooked up with and had a tryst in his car.
Correct.
Okay. And that morning, he contacted her again and asked if she could come do that to him again.
I believe it was her.
Okay? You take this, daughter, you certainly would agree that planning a hookup to get fellatio in your car during the day is inconsistent with someone who was going to murder their child in their car the same day, isn't it?
I don't think it said in his car. He was just trying to hook up.
Okay. But when they hooked up previously, it had been in the car.
Yes.
And in fact, that chat, they talked about that very fact, that it had been in the car.
I believe so.
And you certainly would agree that if he wanted to, on the 18th, Ross could have deleted his Whisper app, he could have deleted the Kick app, he could have deleted all of those images that were on his phone.
True.
He gave you the passcode to get into his phone.
The second time I asked, yes.
Oh, well, let's deal with that.
Okay.
The first time he asked, what was it he told you?
He started to give a passcode. I believe he started to give a passcode, and then he said it was biometric.
Okay. And biometric meaning what?
Fingerprint,
All right. And in fact, that phone is biometric, isn't it?
possibly. I'm not sure.
You don't know?
Don't know.
Okay. It was during the same interview, just I get probably less than an hour later. He gave you the code to get into his phone.
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you about a piece of evidence that you identified this morning. This is State's Exhibit 5. Can you tell if that's 528 or 529?
Sir, I would say it's in here.
Okay.
528 or 529,
I
I'm
can
not
show
sure.
what this is.
I remembered it. Probably my fault. That's a 529.
Okay, thank you. Got clear? Yeah. Hand you 529.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is the screenshot from the Evernote that was on his phone, right?
That's correct.
All right. And I believe your testimony was, and what is the date that Evernote was created?
It's not on here.
Hmm?
I believe it was on the 15th. It'd be that Sunday.
Okay.
But it's not on this one here, sir. I'd have to review. But it was in June, I believe.
All right. And was your testimony of direct just a moment ago that what this Evernote indicates is desire is greater than sin, is greater than death?
Correct.
Okay. That's what you believe that says?
Yes.
Okay. You aware what church Ross goes to?
Stonebridge.
Okay. Did you contact the pastor, David Eldridge, and discuss with him what that sermon was all about?
I did not.
Did not?
I did not.
What the exhibit demonstrates is the word desire, and then a slash and an arrow, the word sin, slash and an arrow, and the word death. That's what it shows, right?
Or it shows a slash greater than, but yes, I'll agree, it can also be an arrow.
Well, in fact, if it was greater than, it wouldn't have that little slash in front of it, would it?
It could.
Isn't it possible, since you didn't speak to David Eldridge, we'll have to just kind of go out on a limb here, but isn't it possible that what this sermon actually was about was the fact that desire leads to sin, and sin leads to spiritual death? Isn't that what it actually means?
It could.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the scene. You had a number of reports from not only witnesses, first responders, such as police, fire, EMS, and civilians, right?
Correct.
And what you learned during your investigation is that there were a lot of reports that Ross was behaving hysterically and screaming.
Correct.
And you learned from some of the witnesses there that he attempted to give CPR.
Correct.
And there were a number of statements that we've heard about and that you learned about through your investigation that Ross made on the scene during this period of time, such as, "This is my fault, what have I done? I've killed my son's gone, I can't believe I did this."
Correct.
And part of the, you had reports from Officer Gallimore and Officer Foglia, which, fair to say, back that up, is that correct?
Fair to say.
You're aware that when Officer Foglia and Gallimore first arrived, they were attempting to do some life-saving measures.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you also aware that Officer Foglia shooed Ross back away from the scene?
I don't think she specifically said she shooed Ross back.
What about ordered or directed everybody back?
She did order everybody back.
Okay. You were aware that Ross was detained
He was?
within moments of Officer Piper arrival,
Yes, sir.
and he was placed in handcuffs,
He was.
and he was placed in Officer Piper's cruiser, and he was moved off away a little bit from his vehicle.
Correct.
You didn't see Ross's emotional outburst when he was in Piper's vehicle, did you?
No.
And we saw a video where there's some screaming and wailing that was going on at some point in time when he was in that car.
Yes, sir.
You didn't see that?
Not at the scene, no.
Okay. But you know what happened,
Yes,
because you saw it in the video.
correct.
And so it's fair to say, it doesn't mean that he didn't have an emotional reaction in the car. You just didn't see it because you weren't there at the time looking at him when it happened,
I did not see him have an emotional reaction.
until you saw it on the video.
I did see something on the video. It was him yelling and screaming. It's similar to other episodes where I've seen him yelling and screaming. I don't believe it's an emotional outburst.
Objectively, what we see is Ross having an outburst. Objectively, that's what we see.
Objectively, we see him yelling and screaming, yes.
You just don't believe it's true. That's the bottom line. You just don't believe it's true.
Or sincere, correct.
And so as far as what we see in the back of the police car then, if he had cried more or harder, would that make it more sincere to you?
If I saw actual evidence, then yes, I would.
Evidence like a video recording of it?
Evidence like tears coming out of your eyes. When we cry, our nose starts to run. If I saw evidence of that, if I saw evidence of anything on his shirt, then yes, I would be more likely to believe that an actual outburst had occurred.
You didn't see Ross pacing around on the phone trying to call Little Aprons to head Leanna off, did you?
No,
Okay. You weren't there to see him with his the phone up to his head and pacing around like the witnesses described, right?
no. The only report I got was that it appeared that he was talking to somebody on the phone.
You've seen the video from Piper's car.
I have, sir.
You've heard the video from Piper's car.
I have.
Okay. You heard him screaming, and you saw him pacing around. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And that's consistent with what a lot of the other witnesses conveyed to y'all during your investigation.
That's correct.
And again, by the time you got there, Ross was already in handcuffs in the back of Piper's car.
Yes, sir.
All right. You walked up to him,
I did.
and you had a brief conversation with him.
I did.
And what did you tell him?
I told Ross that he was being detained, that he was going to be taken up to headquarters, and we would talk up at headquarters and let him know how the investigation would proceed.
And at the time that you walked up to him, do you know how long he'd been in the car?
No, I did not.
And at that time, he wasn't wailing and screaming. He was under control, right?
That's correct.
And did you identify yourself as a detective?
I did.
Did you tell him you'd be the one talking to him?
I did.
And you certainly would agree that if Ross wanted to put on some kind of a show in front of you to demonstrate crocodile tears or fake remorse, that would have been a good opportunity for him to do it right there when the lead detective introduces himself.
Yes, sir.
He didn't do it, did he?
He did not.
What we see in the video is a period of time of him wailing and hollering out when nobody's in the car with him, nobody's standing outside the car right around him, correct?
Correct.
And we hear a lot of commotion at the time that Ross is being directed to get off the phone and ultimately handcuffed. We can hear that on the video, right?
Correct.
You weren't there during that.
I was not, sir.
Okay. But fortunately, we have a video that at least captured the audio portion.
That's correct.
And we've got reports from the officers as well.
Yes, sir.
And what you understand from your investigation is Ross was not being cooperative at that point in time, was it?
He was not.
In fact, is it fair to say that he lost his composure with Officer Folia or Piper?
That would be fair to say.
In fact, he used profanity with them,
He did.
and they used profanity with him.
They did.
Certainly not uncommon for there to be some level of chaos in an active scene like this, though, is there?
No.
Okay. It's almost par for the course. This is when it's intense these kind of sort of outbursts and interactions with law enforcement and the people involved, they happen.
They do.
Okay. They're high-stress situations.
They are.
Now, you previously testified that on July the 3rd, 2014, about what was going on there at the scene. And you would agree that certainly it's not unusual for someone who discovered the body of their child in such a way could very well be in shock,
Correct.
could be dazed,
Correct.
could be showing a range of emotions from outrage to just blankness.
Correct.
And you would agree that would be consistent with some of the information that your detectives got from the witnesses who were there at the scene?
Yes, it would be consistent with some of the information and some of the evidence we've seen.
It's fair to say Ross was all over the place there at the scene. Emotionally.
Emotionally, yes.
Is this a good time for a break?
It's fine with me.
I think we're going to recess, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's all rise for the jury. Looks like your stuff going down.
We stand in recess.